When you think of Black Greeks, the first thing that probably comes to mind is stepping or strolling. These are two art forms that are very unique to the Black experience, but they didn't originate in America, at least not fully. Tonight, in the very last episode of Crossing Over Black Greek Life, we explore this very sacred expression of culture. These movements are precise, rhythmic, synchronizing with a beat made entirely by hands and feet. We've seen it in a lot of media, and it's iconic for a reason. Stepping and strolling are what most people think of when they hear the phrase Black Greek life. It's almost synonymous with the name. But what is it? Why do they do it? I met up with Terrell Carter, the president of the Omicron Beta Sigma chapter of Phi Beta Sigma. He knows all about the history of this art form. So when people think of Black Greek life, the first thing that a lot of people think of is stepping, dancing, all of these things. But can you explain in your words, what is stepping?
Stepping is an expression, right? It's an expression of sound, of art, of creativity, of imagination, all wrapped into one ball, right? There's a lot of thought that goes into step because you have to marry all of those things into one accord, whether it's your feet, your hands, your voice, the different taps, the different basses. You have to make sure that all of those things fall in the right spot at the right time, and everyone is doing the exact same thing. And so from an expression standpoint, it really has been a way for Black Greek-led organizations to express themselves and also bring a little attention to what they're doing, who they are, and where they come from.
Does every organization step?
Once you become a member, you tend to do it, whether it's doing your probate or neophyte show is what we call them now. You do the signature step. So you have, even if you don't step at all after that, you have your opportunity to get that step in, to make sure that you kind of take hold of the tradition and show people exactly what you can do.
Wait a second. Probate? Neophyte? What does that even mean?
Now, stepping really dates back to when people were pledging, and in the 1960s, those persons were called probates. They were on probation. They had limited contact with their friends and peers outside of that process. They were all in terms of joining their organization. Toward the end of that process, those new members then had a performance. So the probates then would get together and they would be formally presented to the campus. This was really the only time we saw this kind of self-expression with these groups. And they had dances that they did. A lot of times they would use the popular music of the day and change the lyrics so that it would be an ode to their organizations. Out of those presentations came stepping going into the 1970s. And so we start to see now this emergence of this new art form.
Okay, so stepping is just a way to showcase I am now a part of this organization and I'm proud of it. These are my letters.
Yeah, see me. Right?
See me.
This is who I am.
But the roots of this art form have nothing to do with neophyte shows or initiations. It was all about communication. South African miners used the sound of their hands and gumboots to send messages to each other underground during the apartheid. Sometimes they'd attach bells to their feet or hands to amplify the noise.
It was their language to alert the other miners that they were doing well, that they were alive, to check on them, to keep their spirits high. It was almost like singing the hymn, but you can't sing, so you're making the beat, and you just, if you're on a miner in a different area and you hear it, then you know that that group is okay, that group is doing well. They're trying to encourage you to continue working, that it'll all be over soon, because we are Black Greek-led organizations, and a lot of the history and the traditions and the heritage that we have comes from our ancestors. That's kind of the way that art form has transformed and gone through generations to where it is now, to where it's almost the same thing, right? We communicate with our steps to the audience, to other Greek organizations, to our brothers and sisters in Greek life, just to say this is who we are, this is what we've been doing, this is what we do as a whole, and to express ourselves, right? So it hadn't gone too far from the origin.
dance represented a type of Black unity Greeks were desperately trying to capture. By the 60s and 70s, they were redefining themselves and their Blackness. Movement was the best way to do that. So members adopted the gumboot dance and added their own identity to it. That's when you start to see the iconic hand signs and gestures and the poses.
It's just now it's very evolved. It's a lot of things that go into it now that wasn't back then.
And depending on what type of show it is, you are telling a story.
Yeah, absolutely.
Step shows can range in their storytelling. You can see a critique of the world or a comedic number about Michael Jackson. But no step showcase would be complete without a stroll.
So this is where people, well, non-Greeks get kind of confused. So they're stepping and then they're strolling.
Yeah.
What's the difference?
So stepping is, like I said, it's building a rhythm or a beat with your hands, your feet, your mouth. Whereas strolling, you're not necessarily dependent upon yourself being the instrument, right? When you're strolling to a song or a recorded beat that's already there for you. So you're literally just filling the gaps with, creative dance.
Strolling was originally called the party walk. It was a unified dance that Greeks did at parties. It started as just one dance for Greeks to show off their letters and moves, but then it turned into almost a necessity.
I think around maybe late 90s, early 2000s is when you really started seeing that strolling was catching up with stepping. And I would say 2000 and, showing my age, 2007-ish, 8-ish was when you started noticing, like, instead of having step shows, you had stroll-offs. And people were putting a lot of time into coming up with strolls because they wanted to perform.
Strolling and stepping are now an integral part of this Greek tradition. And nothing compares to the first time I saw it when I was a kid. I don't think anyone can prepare for the explosion of culture you see when you sit down to watch a show. But it fills me with absolute joy that this art form will live on for generations to come.